I stood in the doorway of my art studio, stunned. Canvases slashed, paint splattered everywhere, brushes snapped in half, my meticulously organized work table overturned, years of work destroyed within a matter of minutes. "Oh, Delaney, I was just making some room in here for my sewing area," my sister-in-law Eloise said breezily, not even attempting to mask the sneer in her voice. "I know your little hobby is important to you, but we need more practical space." I clenched my fists, shaking with rage and disbelief. This wasn't the first time Eloise had passive-aggressively undermined my passion, but this violation went too far. Just then my husband Micah walked in. "Whoa, what happened? Why don't you ask your dear sister?" I spat. Micah glanced uncertainly between us. "Eloise? Oh, please, it was just some paint and canvases. I'm doing Delaney a favor. Maybe now she can find some real work to help with the bills instead of playing pretend artist all day." "Real work? I've sold 3 paintings this month alone," I shouted. "Not that you would understand anything about having a successful career." "Ladies, take it easy," Micah said weakly. "It was intentional destruction of property. How can you defend her?" I appealed to Micah, but he just stood there looking conflicted. Eloise examined her nails. "I think you're overreacting, but I am happy to replace anything I broke as soon as I sell some of the baby clothes I'm making. Should only take me, I don't know, 3 months or so. I know how patient you artists are." She breezed out laughing. I shook with anger as I took in the ruins of months and years of intense work. This was the culmination of Eloise's escalating passive hostility ever since she moved in with us 9 months ago. Micah insisted it was just temporary, until she found a job after flunking out of community college, but Eloise had made herself very comfortable while contributing nothing. Her entitled behavior was one thing when she ate all the groceries I bought or borrowed money from Micah. But destroying the physical proof of my passion and livelihood? Unforgivable. Micah reached out tentatively. "Honey," I recoiled sharply from his touch. "Don't. How can you not stand up to her? Do you have any idea what she just destroyed?" I know, he sighed, running his hands through his hair. "But she's family, you know. I'll talk to her." I let out a harsh laugh. "Oh, will you? That should really snap her into shape." Micah's shoulders slumped. "Come on, babe, go easy." "Go easy? I've supported us for months since you lost your job while catering to your freeloading sister, and this is my reward?" I could feel hot, angry tears pricking my eyes. Micah stared helplessly at the floor. I took a deep breath, my hands slowly unclenching. A strange numbness washed over me as I surveyed the ruins of my creative passion. As devastating as the destruction was, seeing my husband's inability to defend or support me cut far deeper. In that moment, watching Micah shuffle his feet awkwardly to avoid my gaze, I realized any attempts to reason with him or Eloise were pointless. The time for talking was over. If no one else valued my work, I would just have to value it myself and protect it at all costs. Eloise had sparked a rage and resolve in me I never knew I had. If she wanted war, she would get war. This was not just about art supplies or studio space anymore. She could break every last canvas I owned, but she couldn't break my spirit. I wiped the tears from my eyes, set my jaw, and walked out to start planning my counterattack. Micah and Eloise were in for a rude awakening. I awoke the next morning after a restless night, yesterday's events replaying in my mind. As angry as I was at Eloise's actions, Micah's spineless compliance somehow hurt more. I expected hostility from his entitled witch of a sister, but the man I married? His betrayal cut deep. I shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee, noticing the sink full of Eloise's dishes from last night's dinner, the meal I had bought and cooked for everyone. I ignored the mess and poured myself a strong cup, sipping it slowly. My studio may lie in ruins, but I still had work to do for 2 commissioned pieces I had promised my clients. Just then, Eloise sauntered into the kitchen, opening the fridge to grab the expensive organic milk I splurged on for my morning lattes. "Oh, we're almost out," she said blithely, pouring the remains into her tea. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug, forcing myself not to engage. She was clearly trying to provoke me. Well, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. "Oh, by the way," Eloise continued lightly as she stirred an obnoxious amount of honey into her drink, "Micah wanted me to let you know he got laid off yesterday. Such awful timing, right?" I nearly dropped my mug. "Laid off? When were either of you going to tell me?" Eloise blinked her long, mascara-coated lashes, the picture of wide-eyed innocence. Must have slipped his mind. I'm sure with all your paintings you'll be able to cover bills for a while, although... She tapped one perfectly manicured nail against her chin. How steady can that career be? Maybe time to get a real job, sis. It took every ounce of willpower not to smash my mug across her smug face. I took a deep breath through my nose. My income has supported us for the past 2 months. But you're one to talk about jobs. I don't see you making any contributions. Eloise waved a hand lazily. Oh, I help around here. Don't you worry about me. Right on cue, Micah shuffled into the kitchen, his eyes bloodshot. I felt my stomach twist, anger melting into sadness. When were you going to tell me about the layoff? Micah stared at the floor. I just didn't find the right time. I was hoping I could fix it quickly, get it sorted. We'll figure it out, I said gently, my frustration toward him subsiding. At least he was trying, even if he failed. I turned toward Eloise. Maybe you could finally start pulling your weight around here while Micah is out of work, pay back some of what we've spent on you, or help with cleaning and cooking? Eloise let out a sharp laugh like I had told the funniest joke. And interfere with my projects? I don't think so. Face it, Delaney, your pretend career won't carry us. Time to drop the childish art hobby. My hands shook and I spilled hot coffee over my hand. I hardly felt it. You mean my work that paid for that sweater you're wearing? My work that stocked this fridge, you ungrateful, entitled. Ladies, stop, Micah interjected weakly. Oh, this is ridiculous. I couldn't take another second in Eloise's presence or I knew I would completely lose control. I stormed off to my studio to try salvaging any surviving canvases. Over the next week, tensions mounted unbearably. I took on extra graphic design freelance work between painting commissions, sometimes working 18-hour days. Meanwhile, Eloise lounged around scrolling her phone as Micah moped on the couch. One night I emerged from my studio after meeting a tight deadline to find dirty dishes piled in the sink from Eloise's baked ziti. She and Micah sat watching reality TV. Unbelievable. Eloise, it's your night for dinner cleanup. She didn't even glance up from the screeching housewives on screen. Oh, I'm just so busy making progress on my sewing. I'd hate to abandon a creative project halfway through, right? She smirked at me knowingly. I lost it. Months of anger and frustration boiled over. I swept my hand across the counter, sending dishes crashing and shards scattering across the kitchen. Micah and Eloise jumped up, shouting, Delaney! Micah yelled, What the hell? I trembled, chest heaving. I cannot live like this for another second, I seethed. Either she starts pulling her weight around here, or I am leaving. I mean it. I wheeled around and stalked away before either could respond. Their shocked faces burned into my mind. Let them chew on that ultimatum. This was not a bluff or idle threat. I was at my limit, and for the first time they knew it too. The next move was theirs, but I was ready to execute my exit strategy if needed. It had been 2 months since Eloise had destroyed my art studio. In that time, tensions in the cramped suburban house had reached suffocating levels. Eloise continued her passive aggression, hogging shared spaces for her latest hobby of jewelry making, dumping her laundry for me wash, and acting like an entitled princess. Micah remained useless, refusing to confront his sister and only offering weak platitudes to keep the peace. Meanwhile, I was pulling over 60 hours a week at my graphic design job just to keep us financially afloat. Whatever shred of affection or loyalty I still had for my spouse was rapidly dwindling. One evening, I came home exhausted after a brutal workday. The summer heat was stifling, we had no working AC, and commuting for hours on public transit left me wiped. All I wanted was to take a cold shower and work on some concept sketches for a potential gallery show. As I headed towards the bathroom for a shower, Eloise appeared in the hallway, blocking my path. "Oh, I wouldn't go in there if I were you," she said lightly, inspecting her glittery pink manicure. "I just used up all the hot water for my bath, and it's going to take hours to reheat." I stared at her, incredulous. "Are you kidding me, Eloise?" She examined me coolly. You look rather hot and bothered, dear. Maybe you should take up yoga or meditation instead of those angry drawings of yours." I clenched my fists, biting back a scream of frustration. How had I tolerated this for so long? Just then, Micah walked by. "Whoa, everything okay here?" Before I could respond, Eloise jumped in. Oh, we're fine. I was just suggesting to Delaney that she take a break from her little art projects. With your job loss, we could really use the extra income if she picked up more freelance work. Micah shrugged uncomfortably. Well, babe, we are having money struggles. Maybe easing up on the art stuff wouldn't be the worst thing. His timid agreement was the final straw. Months of anger and resentment boiled over. Maybe if your leech of a sister got a job or moved out, we wouldn't have money problems in the first place. I shouted. I'm working myself to death while she destroys my property, eats my food, and you do nothing. Eloise scoffed. So dramatic. I already told you I'd repay you eventually for those silly paints. This isn't just about paints, and you know it, I seethed. You undermine me and sabotage my career at every turn. And you. I whirled on Micah, refused to stand up to her at all. Spineless, useless. I trailed off, shaking with rage. Micah gaped. Delaney, I know you're stressed, but there's no reason for this overreaction. Overreaction? I roared. That's it. I want her out. Gone. Now. Eloise examined her nails casually once more. Well now, that's rather unfair, don't you think, Micah dear? Trying to throw your poor, destitute sister out on the streets? Micah struggled for words. I stared hard at him as he glanced between me and Eloise helplessly. Finally, Eloise broke the tense silence. Okay, here's what we'll do then. Clearly this arrangement isn't working out. She gave me an icy stare. Delaney, you have a choice. Either quit this little art hobby of yours, take some extra hours at your job, and fully commit to supporting Micah during his unemployment. I opened my mouth furiously to retort, but she held up a hand. Or you can choose to leave. Walk away from this marriage, since your career is clearly more important to you than your partner during this difficult time. She smiled sweetly. So what will it be? Your husband? Or your silly paintbrushes? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I turned slowly to face Micah. Well, Eloise tapped her foot impatiently. What's it going to be, sis? Micah shifted awkwardly under my gaze, visibly struggling for words. He stammered helplessly. As I took in his immobilized, pleading expression looking to me for guidance, something inside me went cold and hard. In Micah's silence, I had my answer. Without another word, I turned and walked out. Let them judge me as heartless and selfish. I was done. Little did they know, Eloise may have won this battle, but she had no clue the war she had started. I had put up with their disrespect for too long. Now it was time for payback. I stormed out of the house, shaking with anger and adrenaline. The summer heat did nothing to temper the ice coursing through my veins. I had reached my limit. Eloise and Micah had pushed me past my breaking point. Now they would see what happens when you back a person into a corner. I drove to a coffee shop downtown, ordered the strongest black coffee on the menu, and started making plans. Eloise wanted to force me out? Fine. But I would be the one leaving on my terms, not hers. I took out my laptop and started searching apartment listings in the city's arts district. If I was going to make it as an artist, this vibrant, creative area was the perfect place to rebuild my career and life. I remembered the healthy savings account I had kept hidden from Micah with money from earlier lucrative commissions. He wasn't responsible enough with finances, preferring to let Eloise blow through his earnings instead. Now my foresight would pay off. I had enough for first and last month's rent on a small studio apartment. I emailed the landlord and arranged a meeting that evening to sign the lease. The decisiveness and strength I felt surprised me, but clearly I had an inner resolve I could tap into when pushed hard enough. As I finalized details for my escape to freedom, another plan crystallized. Getting revenge on Micah and Eloise would be the cherry on top. Eloise may have broken some canvases, but I would break her spirit. I opened a secret email account and started drafting messages to the contacts I had made over the years at galleries and publications. Dear name, this is Delaney Rowe reaching out to inform you I have recently discontinued my art career. I cringed as I forced out the lie, knowing this message would torch the reputation I had struggled to build. But it had to be convincing. I explained further how art was merely a hobby, and I had too many responsibilities now to continue working with galleries or producing pieces to the same level of quality. Once the emails blanketed my contact list, no one in the industry would look at me seriously again for a long time. My skin crawled, imagining the bewilderment and disappointment my mentors and colleagues would feel reading these words under my name. A bitter pill to swallow, but I reminded myself this temporary career sabotage was necessary for the greater plan. Next, I pulled up the lease document I had Eloise sign when she first moved in, detailing her obligation to pay utilities and household expenses. I had forgotten about this ironclad contract. Clearly, when money was flowing freely from Micah's tech job, we had no use for nickel and diming his sister. What a mistake that had been. I added up 9 months of unpaid utility bills, household items she had used, and borrowed money that was never returned. Eloise owed me thousands. I would give her one chance to pay up when I confronted them about leaving. When she balked, which I knew she would, take with the documentation straight to small claims court and let the judge force the spoiled princess to pay. The justice would be sweet and painful. I finalized the details of my new artsy, peaceful life in the city apartment, packed an overnight bag in case Micah gave me trouble about leaving tonight, printed copies of the incriminating lease agreement, drafted an itemized list of everything Eloise owed so I could shove it in her face later. My anger had cooled from raging fire to icy cold precision. I knew this was the only path forward after years of neglect and simmering resentment. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for the showdown ahead. Time to take back control of my life on my own terms. Eloise and Micah may have taken advantage of me for years, but starting today the scales would tip back toward justice. I entered the house ready for war. The time had come to reveal my plans and drop the hammer on Eloise and Micah. I found them on the couch, exactly as they had been earlier that afternoon when we had our blow-up argument. Micah stared sadly at the TV while Eloise scrolled through her phone, oblivious to the storm brewing. I cleared my throat loudly and they glanced up. "We need to talk. Now." Micah stood quickly. "Babe, listen, about earlier." I held up a hand. "Save it. I've heard more than enough from you. It's my turn to talk." I paused, ensuring I had their full attention. "Let's recap this situation, shall we? For over a year, I have financially supported us almost entirely on my freelance work and art sales since Micah was laid off." I glared at Eloise. "During this time, you have contributed absolutely nothing. No rent, no help with bills or groceries. You sit here all day blowing through our limited resources on pointless craft supplies and God knows what else." Eloise rolled her eyes. "We've been over this. You're more successful, so it just makes sense." "I'm not finished," I snapped. "You drain us financially while also sabotaging the very work paying for your lazy ass to lounge around. When I finally get fed up, ask you to contribute. What's your response?" I pulled out the detailed list of Eloise's outstanding debts. "Either I quit everything to take care of you, or leave with not a cent of what I'm owed. Does that about cover it?" Micah reached for me. "Delaney, please." I shrugged him off angrily. "Don't you dare try pacifying me again. The time for placating is over." I whipped out the lease document Eloise had signed when she first moved in. "You have 2 options here. Start paying back the thousands you owe in back utility bills and expenses per our agreement, or I take your deadbeat mooch self to court." Eloise's smug expression wavered slightly before the mask slammed back down. "You must be joking. Micah would never allow that, right, babe?" We both looked to Micah. I raised my eyebrows, waiting. He shifted under our gaze. Well, the lease does say," he trailed off weakly. Eloise snorted derisively. "You're both pathetic. Delaney, get over yourself. Micah, grow a spine." Inside I was shaking, half in nerves, half in anger. But I kept my tone icy and ruthless. "The free ride ends now. I'm leaving tonight, and I fully intend to be repaid what I'm owed." I gestured contemptuously around the dingy, cluttered living room. "Have fun in this dump without me footing the bills." Micah's eyes widened in panic. "Wait, leaving? What do you mean?" I smiled coldly. "I got an apartment in the city this afternoon. I'm not playing this game anymore. I'll be back tomorrow with movers to collect my belongings. You both better stay out of my way." With that, I turned sharply and strode out, their shocked, gaping faces crystal clear in my mind as the door slammed behind me. I knew Micah would scramble desperately to repair things, swore I heard him shouting my name as I fired up my car. But some betrayals you can't come back from. I allowed myself one deep exhale as I pulled onto the road, heading straight to my shiny new apartment downtown, next to art supply stores and funky cafes. It was small, but it was mine. I had stood up for myself against years of passive cruelty and come out the other side stronger. My new independent life started today. I sailed through my first week in the new apartment, fueled by adrenaline and renewed inspiration. The angst that had weighed me down for years seemed to melt away now that I was free from Eloise's toxic presence and passive-aggressive torture. I reached out to old contacts, apologizing profusely for the strange emails I had sent announcing the end of my art career. I blamed it on stress and assured them I was still very much dedicated to my work. Thankfully, most were sympathetic, writing it off as a momentary lapse. My reputation would recover, but Eloise's was about to be destroyed beyond repair. I immersed myself in creating new pieces featuring dark themes of rebirth, revenge, and women scorned. My brush flowed fiercely over the canvas, releasing years of suppressed emotions. At the end of each cathartic painting session, I would open my laptop and continue working on Eloise's downfall. Using an anonymous alias, I leaked screenshots of our old lease document and her unpaid utility bills to popular art message boards and community Facebook groups. The response was nuclear. Can you believe this freeloader artist? She's giving creative women everywhere a bad name. I watched with icy satisfaction as Eloise's name became synonymously tied to lazy grifter and entitled mooch in local circles practically overnight. My inbox started flooding with shocked, concerned messages from people eager to reconnect now that Eloise's credibility had cratered. A week later, I received an email from a local performance arts high school asking if I would like to rent their gallery space at a huge discount and exhibit some of my recent work. They had seen samples of my new dark revenge paintings posted anonymously online. "We would love to host you for a show here," the director wrote. "Your recent creations and professional journey could really inspire our students about overcoming adversity through art." I nearly laughed out loud, picturing Eloise's reaction if she got wind-eyed. I was being celebrated for artwork based on our feud. Once the runt of our suburban community, now honored by the top art school in the region, my exhibit would cement my comeback and her downfall. I eagerly wrote back, agreeing to meet with their team about logistics. A solo show so soon after restarting my work was a monumental chance. Over the next 2 months, I continued seeding gossip about Eloise's mooching ways while promoting the mythology of my rebirth from the ashes. I wanted the narrative cemented, the weighted-down artist escaping with her passion alive, while the parasite who tried finishing her was left with nothing. Finally, on a crisp fall evening, I stood dressed in a slim black sheath dress among a crowd of arts patrons, critics, and students who had come out for my show's opening night. I overheard excited murmurs about the drama behind the dark paintings as I sipped white wine, basking happily in my triumph. The director took the microphone, welcoming everyone and emphasizing how meaningful it was to host an artist with my traumatic backstory and inspirational revival. Cameras flashed as I took an exaggerated bow and raised my glass. Let Eloise see these images everywhere, the true parasite exposed for what she was, alone back in the dingy house while I stood glowing in my rightful place back on top. The morning after my hugely successful art show opening, I awoke feeling refreshed and victorious. My solo exhibit had exceeded expectations, garnering glowing praise from critics and generating solid sales interest. After years doubting if I could make it alone, I was now confident in my abilities. I rolled out of bed and made a pot of dark roast coffee, grinning to myself as I remembered the look of shock mixed with grudging awe on Micah's face last night. I had spotted him lurking in the gallery corner, clearly blown away by the turnout and acclaim for my dramatic new revenge-themed collection based on my experiences with him and his parasite sister. Served him right to witness what our toxic situation had fueled creatively in me. As the coffee brewed, my phone buzzed. Micah. I hesitated only a moment before swiping to accept. "What's up?" I answered breezily. Immediately I heard loud sobs on the other end. "Delaney, I'm so sorry, I don't know what to do." He sounded completely panicked and incoherent. I sighed, my good mood evaporating. "Use your words, Micah. What's going on?" "It's Eloise," he wailed desperately. "Ever since your art show, people keep messaging her, harassing her about owing you money. She's locked herself in the bathroom for days, threatening to hurt herself. You have to make it stop." I paused, letting his hysterical sobs fill the silence. Good, the vicious harassment campaign was working. Let the parasite get a taste of what I endured from her for years. I don't control random people online, I responded coolly. Surely Eloise has some savings to pay back what she owes me per our lease agreement? Then maybe people would back off. Micah gulped air, trying to steady his voice. You know, she doesn't have any money. Ever since you left and the utility bills fell behind, we've been struggling just to afford food. I can't stand seeing my only sister like this. Please, Delaney, I'm begging you. I rubbed my temples, aggravated that Micah was guilting me to fix a problem they created. What exactly do you expect me to do here? I have my own life now, which clearly I need to protect from parasites looking for handouts. Micah erupted in fresh sobs. In the background, I heard a door creak open. Let me talk to her. Eloise's familiar sharp voice cut through Micah's blubbering. My body tensed instinctively. The phone shuffled and Eloise cleared her throat. Delaney, dear, she crooned with fake sweetness. Congratulations on all your recent success. I could hear her barely concealed scorn. Good. Seems you've adjusted quite well to independent life, she continued brightly. Since you're doing so wonderfully on your own now, I'm sure you won't mind helping out your struggling ex for old time's sake. Her syrupy plea dripped with contempt. I shook my head in disgust. Even begging for rescue from the crisis I created, she couldn't help trying to manipulate me. Time to go in for the kill. You must be truly desperate if you're asking me for help, I said coldly. Here's the deal. I have audio recordings admitting you owe me money. Keep hassling me, and that goes viral next. I'm done being your punching bag. I paused, letting the threat sink in. When I spoke again, my voice was like steel. You won't drag me backwards. Lose my number, stay out of my life, and maybe I'll call off the mob. I'd say it's been nice knowing you, sis, but really, it's been hell. Bye now. I angrily jabbed end call before either could respond. My hand shook slightly as adrenaline pounded through my veins from the confrontation, but it felt amazing putting her in her place after so long under her thumb. I turned my phone off, confident I wouldn't hear from either of those parasites again unless they wanted their lives destroyed. My show's glowing reviews shone like a shield protecting me as I stepped out proudly into this next chapter, where my talent spoke for itself. Finally free. A year had passed since I severed ties with Micah and Eloise and stepped into my new independent life. The days of constantly tiptoeing around Eloise's petty torments while battling self-doubt were firmly behind me. Now, when I pictured their miserable faces from our last toxic interaction, all I felt was the satisfaction of hard-won justice. The contemporary gallery that had taken a chance on me as a rising star after my breakout revenge show had rewarded my risk-taking creativity with a premium wall space for my explosively dark abstract series. Burnt umbers and fiery oranges now danced across the once blank canvas, channeling a phoenix rising powerful and unapologetic from the bitterness of being caged too long. Delaney, your latest pieces are absolutely spellbinding. Marissa, the gallery's owner, gushed as we strolled through the new exhibit one afternoon shortly after it opened. I have 3 buyers already vying for that large crimson-toned one. I smiled graciously, chest swelling with pride. A year ago, I had started covertly dismantling my career to enact vengeance. Now collectors competed for my work, and critics praised me as a talent transformed. Late that night, after celebratory drinks with new friends from the local art scene, I arrived back to my cozy studio apartment positively buzzing with excitement. I had treated myself to a nice bottle of Cabernet earlier, and I poured a glass as I prepared to unwind from the successful opening soiree. As I scrolled absently through emails, one name caught my eye. Micah. Speak of the devil. I hesitated for a moment, anger and hurt flickering briefly before curiosity won out. What could the weak coward possibly want now, so long after I had destroyed his mooch of a sister? I opened the message and read, Dear Delaney, I hope you'll forgive this intrusion after so long, but today I finalized my divorce from Eloise, and signing those papers brought back a flood of emotions about you. After you left, Eloise became more erratic than ever. She lashed out at me constantly while refusing to work. I tried so hard to bring back the sweet girl I once knew, before jealousy toward you poisoned her. Eventually, I had to legally evict my own sister just to regain sanity without her violent tantrums destroying our home. Even then, she tried manipulating me for money, but I cut her off completely last year. I know I failed you when we were together by passively allowing her abuse. Seeing Eloise's true colors these last 18 months made me realize how strong and resilient you had to be putting up with her torment. I took advantage of your light unfairly. Maybe someday we could get coffee and I can apologize properly. Either way, I wish you all the best. You deserve the world, something I see now I wasn't capable of giving you back then. Yours, Micah. I slowly set down my wine glass, letting the words penetrate as my lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. So the leech had fully turned on her host once I wasn't around to feed on anymore. While part of me wondered if meeting up after all this time could provide an opportunity to flaunt my success even more, a bigger part had truly moved on. Micah was clearly grappling with owing me a debt he could never repay. Delicious salt in old wounds, for certain. But why dwell on it? I had everything now I had been seeking: freedom, fulfillment, and finally getting proper recognition for my talents. No point revisiting ghosts of the past, even for an ego boost. I clicked delete, not needing to dignify his pathetic groveling with any response at all. The Micah and Eloise of old were dead to me. All that remained ahead now was light, my blazing phoenix continuing to rise boldly from the ashes they left behind.